The morning sun cast long shadows across the meadows of New Haven as 12 children ran through the tall grass, their laughter echoing in the crisp air. Amy Rodriguez, 12 years old with dirt on her knees and determination in her eyes, crouched behind a fallen log and whispered instructions to her younger brother Ben. "Take Sam and Katie around the left side," she said, pointing toward a cluster of trees. "When you hear my whistle, that's the signal to attack." Ben nodded seriously, his 8-year-old face scrunched in concentration. He grabbed Sam Parker's sleeve and motioned for Katie Wells to follow. The 3 children disappeared into the underbrush like ghosts. This was their favorite game. Every day after school, the kids from New Haven Colony would meet in the forest to play what they called Space Marines. They had built elaborate forts from fallen branches, carved wooden weapons that looked surprisingly real, and developed complex battle strategies that would make their parents proud. Amy checked her homemade communicator, a device she had built from old radio parts and scrap metal. The thing actually worked, much to everyone's surprise. She pressed the button and heard Katie's voice crackle through the static. "We're in position, Commander Rodriguez." Amy grinned. Katie always used military titles during their games. The 14-year-old girl was a natural leader, even though Amy usually planned their strategies. Together, they made an unstoppable team. "Roger that, Lieutenant Wells," Amy whispered back. "Begin the assault in 3, 2, 1. The forest erupted in controlled chaos as the children launched their mock attack. They moved with surprising coordination, using hand signals and tactical formations they had learned from old military documentaries. Their wooden weapons looked crude, but were carved with incredible detail. Their movements were fluid and purposeful. None of them noticed the 3 alien ships descending from the clouds above. Admiral Zektar of the Hegemony Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human settlement through powerful telescopes. His 4 eyes tracked the children's movements with growing concern. The tall, insect-like alien clicked his mandibles in disapproval. "Captain Quindal," he said to his second-in-command, a rigid creature with blue-scaled skin and cold yellow eyes. "Are you observing this display?" "Yes, Admiral." Captain Quindal's voice was sharp with disgust. "These humans are training their offspring for warfare. Look at their formations, their weapon discipline, their tactical coordination. No species develops such skills naturally." On the main screen, Amy's team executed a perfect flanking maneuver while Ben's squad provided covering fire with their wooden rifles. The children moved like seasoned soldiers, communicating through gestures and maintaining strict battlefield awareness. "This is a clear violation of Galactic Law 847C," Admiral Zektar decided. "The systematic military indoctrination of juveniles is classified as a war crime. We must intervene immediately." In the colony's administrative building, Jake Morrison was reviewing supply reports when his assistant burst through the door. "Sir, we have 3 unidentified ships approaching the settlement," she said, her face pale with worry. Jake rushed to the window and saw the massive alien vessels hovering over New Haven like metal storm clouds. His blood ran cold. The colony had been established peacefully, with full approval from the Galactic Confederation. They had broken no laws, violated no treaties. "Send a message to Earth immediately," he ordered. "Tell them we have unexpected visitors." The alien ships landed in the main square with earth-shaking thuds. Ramps lowered with hydraulic hisses, and armed soldiers marched out in perfect formation. The aliens wore full battle armor and carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Admiral Zektar emerged from the lead ship, his tall frame casting an ominous shadow. Behind him walked Captain Quindal and a dozen heavily armed troops. "I am Admiral Zektar of the Galactic Confederation Enforcement Division," he announced through a voice amplifier. "This colony is under investigation for violations of interstellar law." Jake Morrison hurried out to meet them, followed by Lisa Carter, the colony's school principal. Both humans looked confused and worried. "Admiral, welcome to New Haven," Jake said carefully. "We weren't expecting an inspection. Is there some problem?" "The problem," Captain Quindal interrupted, "is your illegal militarization of juvenile civilians. We have observed systematic combat training being conducted by your offspring." "Combat training?" Lisa looked genuinely puzzled. Sir, our children attend regular school classes. They study mathematics, science, literature, and art. They're just normal kids. Normal children do not demonstrate advanced tactical awareness and weapons handling, Admiral Zektar stated coldly. We have recorded evidence of coordinated military exercises involving multiple subjects under the age of maturity. In the forest, the children heard the rumble of landing ships but continued their game. Amy had just led her team to victory when strange voices echoed through the trees. She held up her hand for silence. Did you guys hear that? She whispered. Through the branches, they could see alien soldiers moving toward their position. The creatures looked like something from a nightmare, with weapons that glowed and armor that seemed to absorb light. Should we run? Ben asked quietly. No, Amy said firmly. We're not doing anything wrong. Let's see what they want. The alien patrol found the children gathered around their wooden fort. The soldiers stopped abruptly, staring at the elaborate construction. The fort had been built with impressive engineering, featuring multiple levels, defensive positions, and even a working drawbridge made from rope and pulleys. Subjects located. One soldier reported through his communicator. 12 juvenile humans with sophisticated fortification and combat equipment. Amy stepped forward with a confidence that only children possess. Hi there, she said politely. Are you here to play with us? We're pretending to be space marines fighting alien invaders. It's really fun. The lead soldier examined Amy's wooden rifle with obvious alarm. The weapon had been carved with incredible detail, complete with a working bolt action and realistic sights. To alien eyes, it looked like a training version of a military weapon. These are not toys, the soldier muttered to his companion. These are precise replicas of human military equipment. Within minutes, the children found themselves surrounded by armed aliens. Despite their fear, they remained remarkably calm. Katie stepped up beside Amy, her chin raised defiantly. What do you want? She asked. You are under arrest for participating in illegal military training, Captain Quindal announced as he arrived with reinforcements. Under Galactic Law 847C, you'll be transported to Nexus Prime to await trial. But we were just playing, Sam Parker protested. The 10-year-old's eyes were wide with confusion. We weren't hurting anyone. Your games are preparation for warfare, the captain replied coldly. No civilized species trains their young for combat. You have been systematically conditioned to become soldiers. Back in Colony, Jake Morrison and Lisa Carter watched in horror as the alien soldiers marched 12 children toward their ships. Parents ran from their homes, screaming and pleading for their sons and daughters. You can't take our children, Lisa cried. They haven't done anything wrong. They are evidence of your species' militaristic nature, Admiral Zektar stated without emotion. They will be held until proper authorities can determine the extent of this violation. Amy looked back at her parents as the aliens forced her up the ship's ramp. Her mother was crying, reaching out desperately. Her father stood frozen with shock and growing rage. It's okay, Mom, Amy called out. We'll be fine. We're good at games. The alien ship's doors closed with a final, terrible sound. Within moments, the 3 vessels lifted off and disappeared into the clouds, taking New Haven's children with them. Jake Morrison activated the colony's emergency transmitter with shaking hands. His message to Earth was simple but desperate. They took our kids. God help us all, they took our kids. In the depths of space, the alien fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying 12 human children toward an uncertain fate. None of the aliens realized they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. The emergency meeting room in Earth's Global Defense Headquarters buzzed with tension. Fleet Admiral Richard Stone sat at the head of the long table, his weathered face grim as he reviewed the report from New Haven Colony. Around him, Earth's most powerful leaders waited in silence. President Maria Santos entered the room with quick, determined steps. Her usual diplomatic smile was nowhere to be seen. Behind her walked Secretary of Defense William Hayes, a man known for his calm demeanor, who now looked ready for war. Tell me this is some kind of mistake, President Santos said without preamble. Admiral Stone shook his head slowly. No mistake, Madam President. The Galactic Confederation has arrested 12 of our children on charges of illegal military training. They're being transported to Nexus Prime for trial. Military training? Secretary Hayes leaned forward. They were playing games in the forest. That's exactly the problem, said Dr. Elena Vasquez from her seat near the window. The head of Earth's xenopsychology department looked tired but alert. The aliens don't understand human children. What we see as normal play behavior, they interpret as systematic combat conditioning. President Santos sat down heavily. Explain it to me, Doctor. Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing footage from New Haven. The children could be seen running through the forest, building forts, and engaging in mock battles with their wooden weapons. Every human child plays war games, she began. It's how we learn cooperation, strategy, and problem-solving. We build forts, we have mock battles, we create elaborate scenarios. It's completely natural behavior that has existed for thousands of years. But the aliens see something different. Admiral Stone added grimly. Exactly. Most alien species don't engage in competitive play during childhood. Their young focus on academic learning and social cooperation. When they observe human children demonstrating tactical awareness, weapon handling, and military-style coordination, they assume it's deliberate training. Secretary Hayes studied the footage carefully. Those kids did show remarkable organization and skill. Because they're human children, Dr. Vasquez said with a sad smile. Amy Rodriguez built a working radio from spare parts. Katie Wells organized complex battle strategies. Sam Parker calculated trajectory angles for their wooden projectiles. To them, it was just fun. To the aliens, it looked like a junior military academy. President Santos stood up and paced to the window, looking out at the sprawling city below. What are our options? Admiral Stone's expression grew deadly serious. That depends on how far we're willing to go, Madam President. The Galactic Confederation believes they're dealing with a primitive species that will submit to their authority. They have no idea what they've just triggered. What do you mean? They've taken our children, ma'am. Human children. There isn't a parent on Earth who won't support any action necessary to bring them home. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, President Santos turned back to face them. Admiral Stone, what assets do we have available? A thin smile crossed the Admiral's face. More than the aliens realize. Much more. He activated the room's main display, showing what appeared to be a standard star chart. For the past 20 years, since first contact with hostile aliens, we've been preparing for interstellar conflict. Operation Hidden Fleet has been our most classified project. The star chart shifted, revealing dozens of new contacts scattered across multiple systems. Every mining operation, research station, and commercial vessel we've established has been a cover. What the Confederation sees as peaceful human expansion is actually the largest military deployment in galactic history. Secretary Hayes stared at the display in amazement. How many ships? 347 combat vessels, ranging from stealth frigates to planet-killer dreadnoughts. All disguised as civilian infrastructure. All waiting for my signal. President Santos felt a chill run down her spine. The aliens have no idea. None whatsoever. They think we're a young species with limited technology and no military ambition. They're about to learn otherwise. Admiral Stone pressed a control, and communication channels opened across the galaxy. All Hidden Fleet commanders, this is Admiral Stone. Authorization code Alpha 77. Operation Family Shield is now active. Repeat, Operation Family Shield is now active. Captain Alex Turner received the signal aboard what appeared to be a simple asteroid mining platform in the Kepler system. With practiced efficiency, his crew began stripping away the false panels and equipment that had disguised their ship for 5 years. The mining platform transformed into the stealth cruiser Shadow Strike, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays that the Confederation had never seen before. Navigation, plot a course for Nexus Prime, Turner ordered. Maximum stealth approach. We have children to bring home. Similar transformations were taking place across a dozen star systems. Commander Rachel Davis watched her crew prepare the battleship Retribution, a massive vessel that had been masquerading as a deep space research station. Within hours, it would be leading a task force toward the Confederation capital. Back on Earth, Dr. Vasquez was briefing the War Council on Confederation psychology. The aliens operate on strict hierarchical principles. They believe superior technology and overwhelming force will always achieve compliance. They've used this approach successfully with dozens of species. But not with humans, Admiral Stone said.
Exactly.
They don't understand that humans become more dangerous when we're protecting our families. They think arresting our children will force us to submit. Instead, they've guaranteed that we'll fight with everything we have. President Santos made her decision. Admiral, you have full authorization to retrieve our children by any means necessary. But I want to be clear, we're not starting an unprovoked war. We're responding to an act of aggression against human civilians. Understood, Madam President. But you should know that our response will likely reshape the galactic balance of power. Meanwhile, aboard the alien flagship Eternal Justice, the human children were discovering that their captors had seriously underestimated them. Amy Rodriguez had been studying the ship's layout during their escort to the detention area, mentally mapping corridors and noting security measures. "This is actually pretty cool," Ben whispered to his sister as they were locked in a holding cell. "It's like being inside a real spaceship." "It is a real spaceship, dummy," Amy replied, but she was smiling. Even in captivity, her natural curiosity was taking over. The alien technology was fascinating, and she was already wondering how their systems worked. Katie Wells had positioned herself near the cell's force field barrier, studying the control panel with intense interest. "Look at this," she said quietly to Sam Parker. "See how the energy field fluctuates? There's a pattern to it." Sam, who excelled at pattern recognition games, watched carefully. "You're right. It pulses every 12 seconds, and there's a brief gap when the power cycles reset." "Enough for someone small to squeeze through?"
Katie asked.
"Maybe," Sam said thoughtfully. "But we'd need a distraction." The alien guards were becoming increasingly uncomfortable with their prisoners. Most species' children would be crying, pleading, or showing signs of trauma by now. These human youngsters seemed to be treating their imprisonment as an interesting puzzle to solve. Amy had struck up a conversation with one guard, asking innocent questions about the ship's operation. "How does this thing fly so fast? What makes the lights work? Where do you keep the food?" Her curiosity seemed genuine and harmless. What the guard didn't realize was that Amy was systematically gathering intelligence about the ship's critical systems. Every answer gave her more pieces of a puzzle she was rapidly solving. Back on Earth, the Hidden Fleet was mobilizing with terrifying efficiency. Ships that had spent years establishing themselves as harmless civilian operations suddenly revealed their true nature. The galaxy's most sophisticated intelligence network activated, and human agents embedded throughout Confederation space began their work. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Brooks had spent 5 years working as a trade negotiator on the Confederation capital world. His real job was much more interesting. Within hours of receiving his activation signal, he had compromised 3 major computer networks and was feeding real-time intelligence to the approaching human fleet. The Galactic Council remained blissfully unaware of the storm approaching their doorstep. They viewed the human children as evidence of a militaristic species that needed to be contained. Their solution was simple: demonstrate overwhelming superiority and force compliance. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic mission, every peaceful gesture had been part of a larger strategy. Earth's leaders had learned from history that true peace came from strength, not submission. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display as human forces moved into position around Nexus Prime. The alien capital was about to receive visitors they never expected. "Signal from the Shadow Strike, sir," his communications officer reported. "Captain Turner has reached the outer system and begun reconnaissance." "Excellent. Signal all fleet commanders. Operation Family Shield enters Phase 2 in 6 hours. Our children are coming home." The Confederation was about to learn that threatening human children was the single greatest mistake they could possibly make. Aboard the alien flagship Eternal Justice, the crew was beginning to understand why their superiors feared human children. The 12 young prisoners had been in custody for only 8 hours, but they were already causing problems that no one had anticipated. Amy Rodriguez pressed her face against the force field barrier, studying the energy patterns with the focused attention of a scientist. Her younger brother Ben sat cross-legged on the floor, using scraps of fabric from his clothes to create what looked like a detailed map of the ship's layout. "How does he know all that?" whispered Guard Commander Thekal to his lieutenant. The massive alien's 4 arms gestured nervously at Ben's surprisingly accurate diagram. "I don't know, sir. The small human hasn't left the cell, but his map shows details we haven't even told them about." What the guards didn't understand was that Ben had an exceptional memory and natural talent for spatial reasoning. During their brief escort through the ship's corridors, he had absorbed every detail: the curve of passages, the spacing of doors, the location of junction boxes and ventilation shafts. Katie Wells had discovered that the ship's internal communication system could be accessed through the cell's waste disposal unit. By carefully manipulating the system's controls, she could listen to conversations throughout the vessel. "The guards are scared of us," she reported quietly to Amy. "They keep talking about how unnatural we are." "Good," Amy replied with a grin. "Scared people make mistakes." 10-year-old Sam Parker had made the most disturbing discovery of all. By asking innocent questions about mathematics and physics, he had tricked the guards into explaining how the ship's navigation computer worked. Now he was quietly calculating faster-than-light travel equations in his head. "I think I understand how they do the jumps to hyperspace," he whispered to Katie. "It's actually pretty simple once you know the basic principles." The alien crew was growing more nervous by the hour. These human children showed no fear, no desperation, and no respect for their captor's authority. Instead, they treated their imprisonment as an interesting learning experience. Captain Quindal paced the bridge anxiously. "Admiral Zektar, I strongly recommend we accelerate our journey to Nexus Prime. These humans are unsettling." The Admiral studied surveillance footage from the detention area. The children appeared to be playing some kind of word game, but their behavior patterns were unlike anything in the Confederation's xenological databases. "They're planning something," he said finally. "Double the guard detail and increase sensor monitoring." What the aliens couldn't see was that the children's word game was actually a complex code system Amy had developed. Every seemingly innocent phrase conveyed tactical information about guard rotations, ship systems, and potential escape routes. "The blue-scaled one checks the energy panels every 20 minutes, Amy said in code. "The big 4-armed one always stops at Junction 7 during his patrol. The communication system pulses reset every 12 seconds, Katie added. The disposal unit connects to the main data network." Meanwhile, in space around Nexus Prime, humanity's hidden fleet was taking position. Captain Alex Turner's stealth cruiser Shadow Strike drifted through the asteroid field beyond the system's outer planets, invisible to Confederation sensors. "Long-range scans complete, sir," reported his sensor officer. "I'm reading 43 Confederation vessels in orbit around Nexus Prime. Standard defensive formation." Turner smiled grimly. "They have no idea we're here. Continue passive scanning. I want to know everything about their fleet composition before Admiral Stone arrives." The stealth technology aboard human ships was unlike anything the Confederation had encountered. Instead of simply avoiding detection, human stealth systems actively fed false information to enemy sensors. To Confederation instruments, the approaching human fleet appeared to be nothing more than space debris and background radiation. Commander Rachel Davis aboard the battleship Retribution was coordinating with ground-based intelligence assets. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Brooks had spent years establishing himself as a harmless trade negotiator on Nexus Prime, but his real value was about to be revealed. "Patriot Base, this is Retribution Actual," Davis transmitted on an encrypted channel. "Request status update on local assets." "Retribution, this is Patriot," came Brooks' reply from the planet's surface. "All systems compromised and ready for activation. I have access to traffic control, power grid, and military communication networks. The Confederation has no idea what's about to hit them." Earth's intelligence operations had been more extensive than anyone imagined. For 20 years, human agents had embedded themselves throughout Confederation space, establishing legitimate careers while secretly building a network of compromised systems and planted assets. Every trade mission had included intelligence specialists. Every diplomatic exchange had carried covert operatives. Every cultural exchange program had been an opportunity to place sleeper agents in critical positions. The Galactic Council was still completely unaware of the danger approaching their capital. They viewed the arrest of human children as a necessary action against a potentially militaristic species. Their own xenologists had assured them that humans would respond with typical junior species behavior: protests, negotiations, and eventual submission. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Stone's flagship, the massive dreadnought Terra's Wrath, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. Within minutes, it was joined by 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 24 support vessels. Communications: open a channel to the Confederation fleet, Stone ordered. Sir, they're hailing us, his communication officer reported. Admiral Zektar is demanding to know our intentions. Put him on screen. The main display flickered to life, showing the imposing form of Admiral Zektar on his bridge. The alien's 4 eyes widened in surprise as he took in the human fleet's obviously military nature. Admiral Stone of the Earth Defense Force, Stone announced formally. You are holding 12 human children in violation of interstellar law. I'm here to take them home. Impossible, Zektar replied. Your species doesn't possess military vessels of this sophistication. These must be captured Confederation ships. Stone's expression didn't change. Admiral, you arrested our children based on your misunderstanding of human nature. Now you're about to discover what happens when you threaten human families. Your primitive species cannot challenge the might of the Galactic Confederation. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. The consequences, Stone said quietly, are something you should have considered before taking our kids. He cut the communication and turned to his tactical officer. Signal all ships. Begin Operation Family Shield, Phase 3. Across the system, human vessels that had been invisible to Confederation sensors suddenly appeared on every screen. The aliens watched in growing horror as their instruments registered ship after ship materializing from apparently empty space. How many are there? Zektar demanded. Sir, I'm reading, this can't be correct, over 300 contacts, all showing military signatures. The Confederation fleet had been outnumbered 7-1 without even realizing it. But the real shock came when the human ships began demonstrating capabilities that defied Confederation understanding of physics. Captain Turner's shadow strike phased through solid matter, passing directly through an asteroid before rematerializing on the other side. Commander Davis's retribution generated weapon signatures that didn't match anything in Confederation databases. Sir, Zektar's tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic, their technology is completely unknown. Our weapons may not be effective against their defensive systems. On Nexus Prime's surface, Lieutenant Colonel Brooks activated the systems he had spent years carefully compromising. Traffic control networks began displaying false information. Power grids fluctuated in carefully planned patterns. Military communication arrays started receiving corrupted data. The planet's defensive systems suddenly became unreliable. Sensor networks reported contradictory information. Command and control centers found themselves cut off from their orbital assets. This is impossible, General Crixon muttered from his command bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. How can a primitive species have infiltrated our most secure systems? The answer was simple but terrifying. Humans had been planning this operation for 20 years, and they had prepared for every possible contingency. Aboard the Eternal Justice, the human children felt the ship shudder as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the small viewport in their cell, they could see the lights of Nexus Prime growing larger. Looks like we're almost there, Amy observed calmly. I wonder if our parents are worried about us, Ben said with genuine concern. Katie smiled. I bet they're doing something about it right now. Sam Parker had been unusually quiet, working on calculations that none of the others fully understood. Finally, he looked up with a satisfied expression. I figured out how to disrupt their hyperspace navigation system, he announced casually. Wanna see? The alien guards monitoring the cell felt a chill of absolute terror. The small human had just claimed to understand technology that had taken the Confederation centuries to develop. And from his confident expression, he wasn't bluffing. In the space around Nexus Prime, Admiral Stone prepared to demonstrate why threatening human children was the single greatest mistake the Galactic Confederation had ever made. All ships, he broadcast, remember what we're here for. Those are our kids down there, and we're taking them home. The crisis reached its breaking point when Amy Rodriguez looked directly into one of the surveillance cameras in their cell and smiled. It wasn't the innocent smile of a frightened child. It was the confident grin of someone who had figured out exactly how to solve a complex puzzle. Guard Commander Thekal, she called out sweetly, could you come here, please? I have a question about your computer system. The massive alien approached the force field barrier cautiously. Over the past day, he had learned to fear this small human's questions. Her innocent curiosity had already led the guards to reveal far too much information about ship operations. What do you want, human child? He asked nervously. Well, I was wondering about the energy distribution network, Amy said, pulling a small device from her pocket. She had built it from components stripped from the cell's waste disposal unit, ventilation system, and lighting fixtures. See, I think there might be a feedback loop in your power coupling system. Before Thekal could respond, Amy activated her improvised device. The lights in their section of the ship immediately began flickering in a specific pattern. Short, short, long, short, repeating endlessly. What have you done? The guard commander demanded. Morse code, Ben explained helpfully from where he sat drawing on the floor. It says, help us in the old Earth language. Amy's broadcasting it through your entire electrical grid. Thekal stared at the device in Amy's hands with growing horror. That's impossible. Our systems have multiple security protocols. They do, Katie agreed cheerfully from her position near the communication panel. But your security is designed to stop outside attacks, not problems that start from inside the system. Amy's signal is now being carried by every power cable in the ship. 10-year-old Sam Parker looked up from his mathematical calculations with a proud smile. And since I figured out how your navigation computer works, I've been introducing small errors into the stellar positioning data. Nothing dangerous, he added quickly. Just enough to make your hyperspace jumps less accurate. Captain Quindal burst into the detention area, his yellow eyes wide with panic. What are they doing? Our navigation systems are showing random fluctuations. The small human claims he has altered our stellar positioning data, Thekal reported. Sam nodded enthusiastically. It wasn't hard once I understood your computational matrix. See, your computer calculates jump coordinates using a base 16 mathematical system, but it relies on quantum fluctuation measurements that can be influenced by electromagnetic interference. The aliens exchanged glances of pure terror. The child was describing advanced hyperspace theory as if it were a simple word problem. This is impossible, Captain Quindal muttered. No species develops such technical understanding without formal education. We play a lot of puzzle games, Amy explained. And we watch science documentaries. Plus, Sam's really good at math. What the aliens couldn't understand was that human children learn through play and exploration, developing problem-solving skills that alien species only acquired through years of formal study. The games that seemed like harmless entertainment to humans were actually sophisticated training in logic, engineering, and tactical thinking. In space around Nexus Prime, Admiral Stone received Amy's signal through his ship's communication arrays. The repetitive Morse code was being broadcast by the Eternal Justice itself, transmitted through the vessel's own power systems. Sir, we're receiving a signal from the children, his communication officer reported with amazement. They've somehow hijacked the alien ship's electrical grid. Stone allowed himself a brief smile. That's our kids. Can you get a lock on their position? Yes, sir. The signal is coming from Detention Level 7, Section 12. Forward those coordinates to all ships. When we make our move, I want pinpoint accuracy. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was meeting an emergency session. The appearance of Earth's hidden fleet had sent shockwaves throughout Confederation space. For the first time in their history, they faced a species that had successfully concealed its true military capabilities. How is this possible? Demanded Counselor Vexani of the Zolani Republic. Our intelligence services reported that humans possessed only primitive space capabilities. It appears, replied Supreme Chancellor Mordak grimly, that we have been systematically deceived for over 2 decades. Human trade missions and cultural exchanges were actually intelligence operations on an unprecedented scale. The evidence was mounting rapidly. Human agents embedded throughout Confederation space were simultaneously revealing their true identities and sabotaging critical systems. What had seemed like peaceful integration was actually the most sophisticated infiltration operation in galactic history. On Nexus Prime, Lieutenant Colonel Danny Brooks was coordinating the systematic disruption of planetary defenses. From his office in the Confederation Trade Ministry, he had access to networks that controlled everything from traffic management to military communications. Retribution actual. This is Patriot, he transmitted to Commander Davis. All primary objectives achieved. Planetary defense grid is operating at 30% efficiency. Ground-to-orbit communications are experiencing significant interference. Roger that, Patriot. Excellent work. What the Confederation leaders didn't realize was that similar operations were occurring across dozens of worlds simultaneously. Human agents who had spent years building legitimate careers were revealing their true purpose, creating chaos throughout the galaxy's most important systems. The economic warfare had begun as well. Human-operated businesses throughout Confederation space suddenly ceased operations. Supply chains that had become dependent on human logistics found themselves critically disrupted. Agricultural worlds discovered that their harvesting equipment required human-manufactured components that were no longer available. Ambassador Carol Mitchell, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, played her role perfectly. When confronted with evidence of human deception, she expressed surprise and confusion. "I'm sure there must be some misunderstanding," she said with practiced innocence. "Earth is committed to peaceful cooperation with all Confederation members. Your fleet is positioned in attack formation around our capital world," Supreme Chancellor Mordak accused. "End space around Nexus Prime." Admiral Stone received Amy's signal through his ship's communication arrays. The repetitive Morse code was being broadcast by the Eternal Justice itself, transmitted through the vessel's own power systems. "Sir, we're receiving a signal from the children," his communication officer reported with amazement. "They've somehow hijacked the alien ship's electrical grid." Stone allowed himself a brief smile. "That's our kids. Can you get a lock on their position?" "Yes, sir. The signal is coming from Detention Level 7, Section 12. Forward those coordinates to all ships. When we make our move, I want pinpoint accuracy." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session. The appearance of Earth's hidden fleet had sent shockwaves throughout Confederation space. For the first time in their history, they faced a species that had successfully concealed its true military capabilities. "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor Vexani of the Zolani Republic. Our intelligence services reported that humans possessed only primitive space capabilities. It appears, replied Supreme Chancellor Mordak grimly, that we have been systematically deceived for over 2 decades. Human trade missions and cultural exchanges were actually intelligence operations on an unprecedented scale. The evidence was mounting rapidly. Human agents embedded throughout Confederation space were simultaneously revealing their true identities and sabotaging critical systems. What had seemed like peaceful integration was actually the most sophisticated infiltration operation in galactic history. On Nexus Prime, Lieutenant Colonel Danny Brooks was coordinating the systematic disruption of planetary defenses. From his office in the Confederation Trade Ministry, he had access to networks that controlled everything from traffic management to military communications. Retribution actual. This is Patriot, he transmitted to Commander Davis. All primary objectives achieved. Planetary defense grid is operating at 30% efficiency. Ground-to-orbit communications are experiencing significant interference. Roger that, Patriot. Excellent work. What the Confederation leaders didn't realize was that similar operations were occurring across dozens of worlds simultaneously. Human agents who had spent years building legitimate careers were revealing their true purpose, creating chaos throughout the galaxy's most important systems. The economic warfare had begun as well. Human-operated businesses throughout Confederation space suddenly ceased operations. Supply chains that had become dependent on human logistics found themselves critically disrupted. Agricultural worlds discovered that their harvesting equipment required human-manufactured components that were no longer available. Ambassador Carol Mitchell, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, played her role perfectly. When confronted with evidence of human deception, she expressed surprise and confusion. "I'm sure there must be some misunderstanding," she said with practiced innocence. "Earth is committed to peaceful cooperation with all Confederation members. Your fleet is positioned in attack formation around our capital world," Supreme Chancellor Mordak accused. The final escalation came when Admiral Zektar made the worst decision in Galactic Confederation history. Faced with overwhelming human forces and the complete breakdown of his authority, desperation drove him to an unthinkable threat. "Human fleet," he transmitted on all channels, his 4 eyes burning with rage and fear. "Withdraw immediately, or I will execute one of your young," as an example of Confederation resolve. The silence that followed was deafening. Across space, human ships stopped all movement, their weapon systems powering down to standby. For a moment, Admiral Stone's fleet appeared to be retreating. Zektar felt a surge of triumph. "You see? Your species understands only strength. Choose which child dies first, or I will make the selection myself." He cut the transmission and turned to Captain Quindal. "Bring me the oldest female. We'll make an example that the entire galaxy will remember." What Zektar didn't understand was that human silence wasn't submission. It was the calm before the storm. In the detention cell aboard the Eternal Justice, Katie Wells heard the announcement through the ship's communication system. The 14-year-old girl stood up slowly, her face showing no fear. "They want me," she said quietly to the other children. "No," Amy Rodriguez replied firmly. "Nobody's dying today." "Then, activate the ventilation disruptor. Sam, trigger the navigation errors. Everyone else, get ready." The alien guards entered the detention area with heavy weapons and nervous expressions. They had dealt with dozens of species over their careers, but these human children unnerved them in ways they couldn't explain. "You," the lead guard pointed at Katie. "Come with us." "I don't think so," Katie replied calmly. Before the guard could respond, the ship's systems began failing in cascade fashion. Amy's electrical disruption spread through every circuit. Sam's navigation sabotage caused the artificial gravity to fluctuate wildly, and Ben's ventilation hack filled the corridor with thick smoke. In the chaos, 12 human children demonstrated why their games had looked so much like military training. They moved with perfect coordination, using hand signals and tactical awareness that came from years of playing together. Katie grabbed a guard's weapon while he was blinded by smoke. Sam disabled the force field using calculations he had worked out hours earlier. Amy led half the group toward the ship's communication array, while Ben guided the others toward the escape pods. The aliens found themselves facing children who fought like seasoned commandos. But these weren't soldiers. They were just human kids who had grown up playing war games, building forts, and solving puzzles together. Outside the ship, Admiral Stone had been waiting for exactly this moment. When the children's signal devices went active throughout the Eternal Justice, he knew they were making their move. "All ships, this is Admiral Stone," he broadcast. "Execute Operation Family Reunion immediately. I want those children recovered, and I want it done now." Commander Rachel Davis received the order aboard her battleship Retribution and smiled grimly. Her ship was positioned directly alongside the Eternal Justice, invisible to their sensors, but close enough for boarding actions. "Marine Detachment, this is the commander," she announced. "Time to bring our kids home." The boarding pods launched from human ships with surgical precision. Captain Alex Turner's stealth cruiser Shadow Strike materialized directly against the Eternal Justice's hull, cutting through the armor with weapons that made Confederation defenses useless. Sergeant First Class Tony Martinez led the first wave of Marines through the breach. What they found surprised even these battle-hardened soldiers. The alien crew was in complete panic. Human children had somehow taken control of multiple ship systems and were conducting their own rescue operation with terrifying efficiency. Katie Wells had secured the bridge. Amy Rodriguez had captured the communication center. Sam Parker had locked down the entire navigation system. "Sir," one of Martinez's corporals reported, "the kids have already neutralized most of the opposition. They're asking if we brought snacks." The Marine sergeant couldn't help but laugh. "Tell them we brought chocolate bars and juice boxes." Admiral Zektar found himself trapped on his own ship, facing human soldiers who moved through his vessel like unstoppable forces of nature. When he tried to use his personal weapon against them, 12-year-old Amy Rodriguez appeared beside him with a device that shut down his energy pistol. "That's not very nice," she said, looking genuinely disappointed. "We were just playing games in the forest. Why did you have to arrest us?" The alien admiral stared at the small human in absolute confusion. She had just neutralized advanced military technology, using what appeared to be a toy built from spare parts, and she was talking to him like he was a playground bully. Your children," he stammered. "Yeah," Amy replied. "That's what we kept trying to tell you." The rescue operation was completed in 18 minutes. 12 human children were safely transferred to Admiral Stone's flagship, escorted by Marines who couldn't stop grinning at their young charge's casual competence. Katie Wells walked onto the bridge of Terra's Wrath and saluted Admiral Stone with perfect military precision. "Reporting for evacuation, sir. We had everything under control, but thanks for the backup." Stone knelt down to Katie's eye level. "Are you all okay? Did they hurt any of you?" "Nah," Ben Rodriguez answered from where he was examining the ship's tactical displays. "They were just scared. Their technology is pretty neat though. Can we study it some more?" The aftermath was swift and decisive. The Galactic Confederation, faced with overwhelming evidence of human capabilities and the complete breakdown of their authority, agreed to immediate negotiations. Supreme Chancellor Mordak arrived at the peace talks with a desperate proposal. "We're prepared to offer full membership in the Confederation, with special autonomous status for human territories." President Maria Santos listened to the terms with polite attention. Ambassador Carol Mitchell sat beside her, no longer pretending to be anything other than Earth's most skilled diplomat. "Your offer is acceptable," President Santos replied finally, "with one additional condition." "Name it." "The charges against our children are dropped with formal acknowledgement that they committed no crimes. Their behavior was completely normal for human young, and your arrest of them was based on fundamental misunderstanding of our species." "Agreed." Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped forward with a thick document. "We've prepared a comprehensive guide to human child development for distribution throughout the Confederation. We want to make sure this kind of misunderstanding never happens again." The document contained detailed explanations of how human children learn through play, developed problem-solving skills through games, and naturally demonstrated the creativity and tactical thinking that had so alarmed their alien observers. 3 months later, Amy Rodriguez stood in the same forest on New Haven where the crisis had begun. She was teaching a group of alien observers how human children actually played. "See, we're not really fighting," she explained patiently to Admiral Zektar, who had requested permission to study human development firsthand. "We're learning cooperation and strategy and problem-solving. It's fun." The alien admiral watched 12 children execute a complex tactical maneuver using nothing but wooden weapons and natural terrain. What he had once seen as militaristic training, he now understood was simply how humans grew and learned. "Your species is remarkable," he said quietly to Jake Morrison, who had been watching from nearby. "They're just kids being kids," Morrison replied with a smile. "The scary part is that you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait until you meet our teenagers." Across the galaxy, the balance of power had shifted permanently. Humanity's hidden capabilities were now common knowledge, and the Galactic Confederation had learned to respect Earth's unique approach to child development. But the most important lesson had been much simpler. When you threaten human children, you don't just face human soldiers or human technology. You face human parents, human communities, and the protective instincts of an entire species that will never, ever stop fighting for their young. In the forest of New Haven, children continue to play their games, build their forts, and learn through the natural creativity that had once been mistaken for military training. But now they played under the protection of a galaxy that finally understood what it meant to be human. Amy Rodriguez looked up at the alien observers and grinned. "Want to play with us? We're pretending to be space explorers this time. No fighting, just exploring and building things." Admiral Zektar declined politely and retreated to a safe distance. He had learned his lesson about underestimating human children. The galaxy was a much safer place when humans were on your side, and a much more dangerous one when they weren't.